All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, ask for a moment of silence, please. All right, I want to welcome everybody and everybody that's viewing. I'm going to do roll call. I'm going to start with Commissioner Stephen.
Here.
Very good, you could hear me, okay. Commissioner Culberson.
Here.
Cause.
Here.
I'm here. Commissioner Smith. Here. All righty. Okay, on public comment, this is the part of the agenda where we allow 3 minutes to people that have signed up. And I'm going to call you up here, call you forward. If you come up here to the podium, please, and give us your address and your name. And again, you have 3 minutes. Kelly Meyer. Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning, Kelly. How are you today?
Good. How are you guys? Not used to not standing here and asking for money, I'll be honest.
Okay. Go right ahead.
So I am Kelly Meyer. I live at 16361 Gilman Road, and I wanted to speak specific to the special use permit application that was submitted for the barn off of 163rd and Gilman. First, I know I have 3 minutes, so I'm going to talk a little fast, but I want to first say very publicly to the Bowdens that I welcome them in the neighborhood. I do not want this to cause a neighborhood issue. They are a lovely family, and I very much so hope to get to know you guys. However, it is our neighborhood, and our neighbors have come together, and we very much oppose the barn being used for commercial use for a facility. So I worked with the neighbors, and I worked to put together the protest petition that was presented but is invalid. So I wanted to provide explanation as to why that happened. Although one of the neighbors did consult with an attorney, we weren't told that it had to be 20% of the acreage property owners. And so we did 20% of the landowners by percentage. There was 42, we got over 10. That's what we did. My fault, total error. However, what I do think it demonstrates is that there is support on our end that we do not, as a neighborhood, really support this happening. Had I known, what I would have done different is I would have contacted Robert Lamborn, because he had already submitted a letter opposing the special use permit being granted. And if I would have gotten his signature, we would have definitely made the 20.5 acres. That wouldn't have been an issue. Regardless, I did it wrong. It's not valid, but I wanted to provide that explanation to let you guys know what had happened, and to also let you know that there was support throughout the neighborhood, and that by and large, if it hadn't been raining, I'd had more evenings, I would have talked to more people. I assume I would have had more signatures. But the last couple of weeks that we were trying to get this done in that 14-day window, it was a typhoon outside, so that didn't happen. Secondly, I want to make sure to mention that my two concerns were, first, traffic. Gilman Road and 163rd, they both are, there's not a center line on the road, there's no shoulders on the road, there's poor lighting on the road. For the amount of traffic that we are seeing, it is dangerous. I have a 14-year-old, she rides a skateboard on our road. It's never been an issue until this last spring, and we had lots of problems with her trying to stay off the road. I have a 19-year-old who was almost hit by somebody that was pulling off of 163rd that was coming from that facility. Now, are those the only incidents we've ever had with traffic? No. But it definitely has spiked over this past winter. So we know it's a problem, and it is significantly increased traffic to our area. The other is that it's a lot of traffic. I mean, we moved out there so that we would be in a quieter neighborhood. We wouldn't have this huge influx of people coming down our street, and that is not the case. It's at least 10 to 15 cars per hour during those nights. That's not the feel of the neighborhood that we've had for the last 10 years up until like December of this year. And I also wanted to make sure, because I did file the protest petition that I mentioned, there were several other things the neighbors felt were priority that weren't necessarily my priority. They definitely did not like the appearance of the barn, the fact that it was done first and then asked permission later. Many people in our neighborhood are very upset with the fact that that has happened, and just inconsistency in some of the ways that we have had information shared. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Okay, is it Colleen Killer? Good morning.
My name is Colleen Keller. I live at 16331 Gilman Road. I'm here today to also talk about what has happened in the neighborhood since this building was built. I understand that there is a cease and desist order, so they should not be in operation. That's what I assume. But there are cars there every night during the week. For the last 2 weeks, I have a great view to their barn. It's just I can't look out my window and not see it. So 2 weeks ago, there were cars, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 4 cars at least. Last week, I have pictures here of the cars that were there. 2 kids that were parked on the road itself they had to be at least 16 years old. And they ran out and moved their cars very fast. There's not supposed to be any traffic there. I feel terrible for the people that live. For Tina that just built their house a year ago, and Tony, they have no privacy. I worry about this devaluing my property because who can sell a house in the first quarter of the year with all this traffic? I don't know if you could even sell a house right now just because there's people there all the time. One thing I noticed, I know they have the little portable bathroom up there now, but about 2 months ago, on 2 different occasions, I saw 2 people, an adult and a child, come out, and again, where I face, I can see everything, and they urinated next to the building. I think that's pretty pathetic. So I just hope that this is not approved. I think it's a bad deal. They seem like nice people, but I think they've kind of pushed the gun and pushed the limit with all the neighbors. So I have pictures if you'd like to see them.
All right, thank you.
And their date stamped.
Okay, while we're passing those on, I have Charity Briggs. Hi, you come forward. Good morning.
I'm talking about the same permit. Do I have to read the permit number?
No,
okay,
you go right in.
It's very long. My name is Charity Briggs. I live at 25155 163rd Street. I'm going to go ahead and read this because I hope that's okay. I'm in opposition of the special use permit. At the last meeting on May 12th, this permit was discussed. I was appalled at how none of the letters from the neighbors in opposition were addressed at all. I'm not even sure that the committee looked at them since the letters supporting the Bowden's building were included in the discussion in the early pages of the 200-page agenda, and the letters in opposition were included in pages 160 to 180. I'm so upset that we were given so little consideration when we are the ones directly affected. I don't want to read and I don't want to hear about how other cities in the county are excited or approve of this. I want to hear from the neighbors who are affected. I know the people in our neighborhood care about this issue and most oppose it. I've spoken to many of them, and we even had a petition signed in opposition. I am extremely unhappy that this outdoor building was built in the first place. It is a huge, ugly metal building that does not look like other buildings in our neighborhood. This building does not contain windows or multiple doors. Instead, it is a huge barn-type door. The structure outsizes the house considerably and does not look like it would even belong next to newly built buildings. The owners now intend to put a gravel parking lot in front of this building for their needs as a baseball practice facility. This would also face a residential neighborhood. I will not argue with the need for our county to have some kind of sort of indoor sports arena or practice and game area. This is just not the right place for it. Mr. Bowden has acknowledged that he organized this competitive baseball team as a nonprofit organization. So that leaves the door open for him to grow his baseball club and the number of teams and the practices to grow as well. I would also like to point out that nonprofit does not mean that their business will not make money or if it affects whether this is deemed a commercial property. Commercial property can be defined as real estate intended to generate a profit from capital gains or rental income. This building meets those qualifications. Other reasons I do not wish this building to be given a permit is the noise generated from the building. While the practice is indoors, I have witnessed parents and kids outside talking, yelling, and lots of cars going by. These are producing noise in the evenings in our neighborhood. I can hear this from my house. I also do not like picking up trash and have already picked up and thrown away trash on the corner. Kids do need to use the bathroom, and I do not want porta potties placed outside the property. I am also not wanting the season to stretch on and on as it has. The Bowdens have stated that the building would only be in use from January to March. When they stated this at the last meeting, I went outside and saw 3 cars outside the barn, and the doors were open and I could see people playing inside. I also have seen cars parked on the street, and practices are continuing. I have a couple of pictures of the incidents, one from May 12th and one from this last Thursday, May 27th. These are some of the reasons that I oppose this permit. And I have pictures if you want, and then I also have a copy of my letter from the last meeting if you would like a copy of that. I don't know what you guys have seen.
I'd like to see the pictures. We'll just pass those around.
Here's one. The one that says Thursday is last week because my phone only puts until it comes to the next Thursday. But that's the same one. I didn't know if you guys wanted a copy of it.
Okay. Thank you. We appreciate your comments. Thank you for the comments. Next, Joe. I know you're back there. I saw you. Good morning, Joe.
Joe Herring, Herring Surveying, 345 North 5th Street. The last thing on your agenda today is Articles 41 and 43 of the Access Management Policy. And this was discussed at the Planning Commission. On Article 41, or number 41, during the work session, the board stated that we're only going to consider the side that we're accessing the road from. In this policy, it states if there is a road on the opposite side, we should do everything we can to make it a four-way intersection, and if not possible, then meet spacing. I think that was I don't think that was the direction of the board, and it leaves it open. This staff and the board, may all agree that, that should happen. It's the best policy to make it a four-way intersection. I don't disagree with that. But it leaves it open for interpretation of the next staff and the next board to actually enforce that regulation. And I just think that language probably should be removed. That cross-access easements, number 43, back to the engineers, having the road engineered for a road that is private, and as stated many times up here, we don't care what they build. I know I sound like a broken record when I say, why are we engineering something that the county doesn't care about, doesn't maintain, and doesn't accept into their inventory? But they asked for an as-built, and they changed the as-built, but now we have to have an engineer sign off saying the road was built as designed. And I think that's another one step we don't need. We have building codes now. Engineers have to sign off on the house plans. The house plans are put to a file. Much like the road plans, nobody reviews them, they don't check them, nobody goes out and inspects them, but an engineer doesn't have to sign off and say the house was built to his design. So why do we have to sign off on a road that's not going to be inspected, nobody reviews it, but the engineer has to say the road was built that way? Just trying to make sure that we're keeping it the way it was discussed, and that we're not adding stuff to the policy that shouldn't be there, and it makes it harder for developers.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments. All righty. Administrative business. Mark?
I just wanted to bring up that the United Way recognized the staff of Leavenworth County for their participation in their last fundraising campaign. I think Commissioner Cos was there to receive that for us.
Yes, and we really appreciate all of the efforts of our staff and their contributions, and we'll do it again next year.
Great. That's great. Mark, that's great.
They holding any events like we did at the courthouse a couple years ago?
That's something that we can discuss with Nancy. I think that it's,
okay.
And we need to do something again. I thought that what we did the last time when things were open and we could do it 2 years ago when we did the employee event was a lot of fun.
Had the cookout and all
Had the
that.
cookout, and I think that we need to do it again.
I'm not sure if I appreciated it as much because I think a bucket of ice water got dumped on my head.
But it was well worth watching.
It was well worth watching.
I didn't
like
see that, so we'll have to do a retake on that.
Okay, all right.
I got
I
dumped
voted
too.
for you, Mark.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I
Jenny
was
and
the
I
only
got the
one,
ice
but-
water there. Yeah.
That sounds like fun. Anything else, Mark?
No, that's all.
Okay. Any commissioners want to make any comments before I move
Not today.
on? Okay, next one's a consent agenda. I need to,
Mr. Chairman, if mine, could I have Ackerland Hills removed from the consent agenda, voted on separately?
okay?
And I need to have the financials, the checking
Check register.
registry removed, please.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the consent agenda minus the Ackerland subdivision and the budget line item for, what was it for?
Check registry.
Check registry.
I'll second it.
Got a motion, a second, any discussion? Okay, I'm going to start with Commissioner Stephen.
Aye.
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 All righty.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the check registry section and the Ackerland. Can we do that at the same time?
No.
No. The check registry of the consent agenda.
Got a motion on that?
Second.
There's a motion, a second. Commissioner Stephen.
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the consent agenda of the Ackerland subdivision
Second?
section.
Motion, a second. Call the roll. Commissioner Stephen.
Aye.
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 Abstain.
All right, passes. Very good. Okay, formal board action. Consider a motion to approve Resolution 2021-15, a zoning from B3 and RR to 5 to B3 located on the corner of 207th and Springdale Road.
Good morning.
Oh, I'm sorry, because I didn't say good morning.
You didn't see me here. Oh, goodness.
I had my head down too long. Go right ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. This is a request to consider Resolution 2021-15. The resolution requests to rezone a partial portion of a property located at 207th and Springdale Road on the the northeast side of the roadway from B3 and RR5 to B3. This was actually brought before you in February of this year. This was originally presented to the Planning Commission for the entire 13 acres to be rezoned to B3. There is current B3 zoning there right at the corner currently at all four corners of that intersection. The applicant had originally requested to rezone the entire parcel to the entire 13 acres to B3. The Planning Commission did not support the entire parcel. There was discussion had about rezoning a portion of the parcel, specifically only for what was going to be used for the business. That got forwarded along. The application was denied at the Planning Commission as it was presented. The Board of County Commissioners sent it back to the Planning Commission with direction to the applicant to perhaps listen to the Planning Commission's direction. Mr. Ledford has presented a rezoning request of only about 6.4 acres of the area where he is requesting to operate his business, which staff felt was in conformance with what the Planning Commission had originally requested. However, the Planning Commission did recommend denial of that request. There is a protest petition that has been filed. That protest petition is valid, and according to state statute, a valid protest petition requires a 3/4 majority vote of all members of the commission. So that's a 4-to-1 vote at a minimum, if this were to be approved. Again, staff recommended approval of this, and specifically since the applicant had gone back and done what he believed the Planning Commission had directed him to do. Mr. Ledford is here and will answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you,
I have a
Chris.
question.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Stephen.
Stephen.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike. Go right ahead. Sorry, guy.
Okay. Crystal, you said that when it first went before the Planning Commission, they had seemingly been in a consideration of making this decision, and then it came to us and it went back. What was the discussion or thought process of why they didn't approve it the second time through?
There was discussion from some of the commissioners about how this business could be operated with a special use permit. and that rezoning was not necessarily necessary. However, again, from direction that staff has been given from the board regarding commercial businesses and the fact that Mr. Ledford was decreasing the amount of area to be rezoned, staff recommended rezoning as opposed to a special use permit, which, as you know, is a temporary business allowance of a business where a rezoning would allow the business to operate without needing a reapproval every 5 or 10 years.
And
Basically, the planning commission would have preferred that we made this a special use permit.
Some members of the planning commission, yes, it was a 4-3 vote, I believe, if I remember correctly. So yes, some members of the planning commission would have rather it been a special use permit.
And Mike, I watched it. And Mike, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Mike?
Yes, I can.
So I watched the meeting, and it was brought up that they were worried about if we rezone it and this business goes away and they sell it to someone else, then any type of business could go in there, and it could be something detrimental to the neighborhood more than they were worried about this one being. So they think a special use permit would then be specific to this business. So that might be a better way to handle it.
Okay, that kind of makes sense to me.
Crystal, this is just an expansion of the current zoning.
There's currently, yes, B3 zoning there. There's about an acre or so of B3 zoning there at the intersection currently, where Mr. Ledford can operate this business in a very compacted way without a special use permit.
And that's the point I wanted to make, is he can do whatever he wants pretty much already with the 1 acre on the corner.
He has to meet setbacks and such.
So I think what he was trying to do was work with the neighborhood and move it back away from the road. Because if he just operates on the corner, then everybody will see everything. But what he's trying to do, I think, is move it to the back so that there's privacy fence and trees and whatever to block the view of some of it. Because it's already zoned on the corner.
Okay. Any other comments? If not, I'll take a motion.
Why, just one more question.
ahead.
Was the SUP discussed early on before the last application?
I believe it came up from a couple of the planning commissioners in the original. Staff felt that the overwhelming consensus, though, was there was a lot of heartburn, if you will, about rezoning the entire parcel because there would be no buffer. So the solution was to rezone only a portion of it. I don't think that at the first planning commission, the planning commission specifically said, bring this back as an SUP. There was a lot of weight and consideration given to only rezoning a portion of the parcel from several members. There are a couple of members who very clearly wanted a special use permit from the get-go, but as a whole.
The other piece that's not going to be rezoned, that's for a residential area?
Correct.
And access will be on?
Most likely would be off of 207th Street.
Because
yes.
KDOT's not going to grant an access.
Yes.
And
Problem is we don't have an SUP presented.
Right, that's what I said, but that's...
So,
but if it gets, correct me, if it gets denied, this doesn't keep this person from applying for an SUP immediately?
So we actually have a provision in our zoning and subdivision regulations where if a rezoning or an SUP is denied, that the applicant has to wait a year to reapply. The board can override that and provide an exception, which if the rezoning is denied, Mr. Ledford would like to apply for an SUP, and then when we would come ask the board for an exception.
Does it read that if an SUP is denied, then a rezoning has to wait, or vice versa? Dave?
Commissioner, under Kansas state law, an SUP is considered a rezoning.
Okay.
But it's temporary.
It is a form of rezoning, not a permanent rezoning. It's a specific rezoning for a specific purpose.
Right, so if we move forward with a special use permit versus a rezone for the entire, for to expand the business, then would that not give opportunity for the business to demonstrate that they are good neighbors, that they would be following through with all of the things that they had indicated would occur, and then potentially in the future for a future commission to consider a rezone.
But we can't
Business.
approve an SUP today because we don't have
No,
the conditions.
right, we don't have,
Right.
right. But
Yes,
I'm
so-
just saying, is that,
Commissioner Collins, I think Crystal has outlined the options you have. Is before you have a request to rezone additional tract to B3, that's the specific request before you. You can't modify that and turn it into an SUP application because an SUP application has certain requirements that would not be met by this rezoning plan. In the event that the commission denied the rezoning, you could waive, if you so chose to, you could waive the 1-year requirement to delay the application to allow an SUP permit to be applied for. The process that applies to special use permits would then be initiated, which would require notice to the property owners. The same opportunity for a protest petition. However, with a special use permit, certain conditions tailored to the proposed use can be implemented, whereas with the rezoning to B3, any use that is allowed within the B3 category would then, from this point forward, be allowed within the tract rezone.
right, and we can't.
Commissioner Smith?
Go ahead.
Yeah, one question I have for Mr. Ledford or for Crystal is, if we do deny this and we want to proceed with an SUP, would that impede him being able to do his business as he's proceeding at this moment? Is there a hardship that's going to incur to him, or does this be something that we could do just procedural?
Again, Mr. Ledford has an area on his property where he can currently operate his business. Commissioner Smith was, or perhaps it was Commissioner Culbertson, I'm sorry, didn't mean to confuse the two of you, discussed that Mr. Ledford is attempting to have this setback off of the property. He does not necessarily want this all crammed right at the intersection. However, he could do so. He could do that. If he applies for a special use permit, if that's the route we go, of course there is the application deadline, the 45 days. This would put us into, I believe, August most likely, before Mr. Ledford would be able to go before the Planning Commission with his special use permit request, and that is assuming that the board provided a waiver to that 1 year.
And that's the point. And that's the point I'm trying to make is I think that the protest petition folks are not understanding. He can already do this. What we're trying to do is work it out to where it's more cooperation with the neighborhood, move it further back. So I don't think people quite understand the legal ramifications of a zoning map. If you buy a piece of property and it's zoned commercial, you can use it for commercial. Even if the neighbors don't like it, it's legally the way that property can be used. So we're trying to find a happy medium between the two.
And I do want to point out, we have site plan requirements. I know oftentimes when we talk about rezonings, the worry is that then it just opens up anything and everything. One, we still have a table of uses, and there are many things that are allowed in a B3 zoning district, certainly. But we do have screening requirements, parking requirements, and such through the site plan process. So it is not the free-for-all necessarily that everyone is concerned that it may become. It certainly allows more things to be accomplished on that property, but there are additional provisions in place.
So basically what we're saying is that you know, on the 1 acre, if the setbacks are observed, that there could be a huge concentration of what the
Neighbors
don't want to see versus an ability to screen it off, to spread it out and
move it in the back.
I'm just,
Yes.
because there is, but it's to make very clear what Commissioner Culbertson was saying, there's absolutely, it's zoned properly for the use on that corner. And nobody apparently can research or figure out why that change was made, but it was made and it was approved, and it is still within the comprehensive plan. That is what that zoning designation continues to be.
And I look back on the maps when they created that, and they did that all over the county. Everywhere there was major intersections, especially on K-State right-of-way.
So they did it to encourage.
KDOT right-of-way.
So they did it to encourage commercial use.
I think they assumed there'd be a gas station on that corner eventually.
It would be a good place for one.
Yeah, but there's a lot of those intersections around the county that have four corners of an intersection with 1 acre commercial zones.
And they did that in 1962?
I think that was it, yeah, in the 60s.
Okay. Any more discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I want to make one. I'm just trying to figure out how to word it. Dave, you got any suggestions? Because what I want to do is make a motion not to approve the rezoning, but waive the 1 year limit and ask them to come back with an SUP.
Commissioners, I would suggest that it be, here's the word for the day, bifurcated into two separate parts. The first would be to address the matter pending before you, which is the request for the rezoning. Should the board vote to deny the request for the rezoning, the board could then subsequently vote to waive the 1 year prohibition for reapplication for additional rezoning. In this case, it could be in the form of a special use permit. You can't require Mr. Ledford to do either, well, to submit that, but that would be an option available for him, perhaps based upon your directives. But I would suggest it be done in two parts if that is your intended goal.
Okay, so my motion first is to deny the rezoning of 20-21 or 2021-15 request to rezone parcel from B3 to expanding to B3 zoning.
I'll second it. Any discussion on that? I'll call the roll. Commissioner Stephen?
Okay, could you restate that? I couldn't hear the motion exactly.
Say no to the expansion of the rezoning.
Okay, I vote yes to say no to the expansion of the rezoning.
Thank you.
Aye.
Mr. Covers? Mr. Collins?
Aye.
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 All right. Now,
Do we make a motion to suggest for an SUP?
Yes,
or?
Commissioners.
And to waive
Waive the 1 year requirement for reapplication for rezoning to specifically for a special use permit.
So moved.
Second.
motion and second. Any discussion on that? Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
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 All right, that is passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, next item is consider a motion to approve Resolution 2021-16, a rezoning from RR5 to RR2 located at the intersection of 177th Terrace and Sycamore Road. Crystal?
Commissioner, this is a request to approve Resolution 2021-16. This is a request to rezone a parcel of ground south of 177th Terrace from RR5 to RR2.5. As you very well may know, there is currently a subdivision at 2.5 acres just to the north. The applicants are proposing to continue that subdivision to the south. The comprehensive plan calls for this area to be rural residential 2.5, so this request is in conformance with that. The Planning Commission voted 7-0 to recommend approval of this. Staff is also supportive of the request.
Questions? Concerns?
No, it's a very nice subdivision out there. It's just going to be an extension of a subdivision. It's very nice.
It is.
Well, there's no comments. I'll take a motion.
I move, Mr. Chairman, that we approve Resolution 2021-16, request to rezone a tract from 5 acre to 2.5 acre residential.
I'll second it.
Motion and second. Any discussion? None. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
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 It passes. Okay. Consider a motion to approve Resolution 2021-17, a special use permit for indoor training facility for youth baseball.
Commissioners, this is Resolution 2021-17. The applicants are requesting a special use permit for an indoor baseball training facility located at 163rd and Gilman Road. I'd like to point out just a few things as we go through here. One, when staff makes a recommendation, we can only make a recommendation based off of the information that we are presented by the applicant. The applicant stated very clearly to us that this was going to be used January, February, the first part of March, and there would be no more than 2 teams using this at any given time throughout those months. That all activities would take place inside of the barn, and there would not be activities taking place outside of the barn. So the facility, like I said, would see the majority of business from January through mid-March. Typically, there are no more than 2 teams practicing. You typically have 10 to 12 kids on a team and a couple of coaches. Some of those kids ride together, so about 10 trips or so in, 10 trips out, twice a day. The activities are described to us as taking place solely inside of the existing building, which is insulated, so noise should not be a concern, assuming that is taking place. There have been many reports of mud on the road off of 163rd and Gilman. That's actually what brought this to our attention to begin with, as neighbors called to complain about people parking on 163rd Street. Staff attempted to reach out to the Bowdens. There was a communication error. The Bowdens had moved, so this took a little bit of time to get this moving forward. We had talked with the sheriff's office, and of course, parking on county roadways is not allowed anywhere. It's prohibited everywhere. We spoke with the Bowdens. They assured us that that would not be an issue anymore. Our office made it very clear with the Sheriff's Department, who does a wonderful job, that if they got a call that someone was parking on 163rd Street, to do what needed to be done, because it's very, very clear that you cannot park on a county street, especially if you're applying for a special use permit for a business. You have to have parking for that. So I want to make that very clear. The fire chief for Fire District 1 recently did an inspection of the building. He has provided a list of items that the Bowdens would need to complete in order to bring this building up to code for fire safety. The Bowdens have agreed to do those items. They're asking that they can wait to do those in case this is not approved. They don't want to turn this into a commercial facility as far as the building standards go if it's not approved. We have had several complaints from the neighbors after this request went out, which is oftentimes what happens. We don't hear very much beforehand. Like I said, we sometimes get a one-sided story. I don't know exactly what is happening out there. I do know that the Bowdens have children who have friends, and 11-year-old boys who have indoor baseball facilities have a lot of friends who want to come over and play those. And as I've spoken with many of the neighbors, that's a difficult thing for the county to police, if you will. We certainly don't want to tell anyone that they can't have friends over. That's not a position that we want to be in, but we want to be very, very clear that if this is approved, it is approved for 2 teams per day, January, February, the first part of March, and that is it. And we need to be very, very clear about that. The Planning Commission did vote 7-0 to recommend approval of this. And I'll answer any questions you may have, and the Bowdens are here as well.
Go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead, Mike.
Now, the Planning Commission knows that this is a change of usage of the location. What was the argument at the Planning Commission to approve this?
What?
Commissioner, I'm not sure I understand your question. Could you repeat that?
Obviously, this is a zone for rural residential, so what was the argument to approve it before the Planning Commission?
Primarily, it was that this is intended to only be used for a very short period of time and by a very limited number of people. It's my understanding that that may not be happening, and I want to be clear that, we go out and we look, but we go out and look at 2:30 in the afternoon and there's nothing going on. We get reports that it's at 7 o'clock in the evening, and that's the nature of these sorts of things. And again, it's difficult to tell whether or not those are just friends over or if those are kids coming over for practices and teams and such, which is one of the things that makes these sorts of things difficult to regulate. However, it's an allowed use with a special use permit in a rural residential zoning district, and the Planning Commission considered the conditions as well as the request.
And this is on 2.5
Does the building
acres.
have restrooms, or does it require portable facilities?
It does not currently have a restroom. That's one of the things that will be required, if this turns into a commercial building, it'll be required to have an engineered septic system. An engineered septic system will be a requirement, and that's
Separate from the house?
in the building, yes.
Okay, you're calling for 10-car gravel parking lot. It seems like when I was reading this, it seemed like 10-car parking lot maybe should move up to 15 or 20 cars.
That was a recommendation by the Planning Commission. Staff's original condition was a minimum of 8. The Planning Commission wished to put a cap on that in order to try to limit the number of people who are coming. Again, that's in conjunction with not being allowed to park on a county roadway. And if there is parking on a county roadway, I hope that neighbors will certainly call and let us know that that is happening. But I believe that intention was to try to limit the number of people who are using the barn at any one time.
But according to Olson, it was going to be up to like 58 round trips. Did I read that correctly?
Correct, because you'll have parents come in. So when they come in to drop off their child, that's 1 trip. And then they might leave to go run errands. So that's 2 trips. And then they come back to pick up their child. So that's 3 trips. And then they leave with their child. So that's 4 trips.
Yeah, it seems like to me that if we're going to approve this, that it should have a little bit bigger parking lot. And what about insurance? That part of
We can make it a condition that they have liability insurance.
But that's not currently a condition.
It is not currently a condition, no.
Yeah, I would think that would definitely have to be in there, depending on what everybody else thinks. But anyway, that's all I have.
Thanks, Mike. Doug?
Was there a cease and desist letter sent out?
Yes. So what happened is, like I said, we were called and told about the parking on the roadway, and then that's when we learned about the baseball facility and such. We actually sent a letter to the Bowdens at their last known address, which they say they did not receive, that said they needed to stop operations and come in and speak with us immediately. We did not hear from them. We sent another letter. We did not hear. And then their builder came in to get a building permit for the home when we denied the building permit because of the operations of the barn. And that's when the Bowdens came in and spoke with us. And we made it very clear that all activities outside of personal use had to cease immediately.
Did it?
It's our understanding that it did. Again, it's a difficult thing to regulate because, I mean, like I said, if you're an 11-year-old boy and your dad built you a really cool indoor baseball facility, you probably have a lot of friends who want to come over, and it's very difficult for staff to regulate that.
Well, I went and observed to determine whether or not the facility was still being used and past the middle of March, and indeed it has been used. Mm-hmm. There has been traffic there, cars parked within the gravel parking lot. I observed that myself on 2 occasions.
Okay, any more questions, Doug? Do you have anything else?
No, sir.
Jeff? Okay, I'll make a motion to deny Resolution 2117, special use permit for indoor training facility for youth baseball.
Second.
Motion is second. Any more discussion? I will call the roll.
Just a minute.
Go ahead, Mike.
I just a little bit hard time hearing. You made a motion to deny. Is that correct?
Yes, that's it. What I did, Mike.
Okay. Yeah, I do think after hearing from all the school people, I do want to acknowledge that this is a positive thing for the schools. However, a lot of it had to do, I believe, with COVID, where a lot of these facilities have to be closed down that are probably reopening. So I'd just like to acknowledge that they, this family provided a great service during this time.
Okay, Mike. Your vote.
No.
Mr. Culberson?
Nay.
Commissioner Cos?
I'm voting to.
I'm voting to deny it.
Yeah, I vote to deny. Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. It's denied 3-2. One thing I would say, though, after reading all the letters and the support from this this is definitely something that, after some of us have coached for a lot of years, this is something definitely needed up here. If there was any way to make this possible, I would have sure looked at it. But I was on the site yesterday, and I just don't feel that this is the location for it. But I do appreciate anybody that goes out and coaches and volunteers. If we could just get more of that in Leavenworth County, I'd be very supportive.
I'd like to see the rec commission do something.
Yeah, I think
or the schools.
I think what they're trying to do
is so important.
I know. I think what they're trying to do is absolutely honorable. But
we're on 2.5 acres.
Yeah.
Right. That's
the thing. I think it
was closer, but it's just not the right place.
Yeah.
I mean, the location is not the right place. The idea, the concept, the desire to do what they're doing is incredible.
Yeah.
And I agree. There's not anything anybody can do about the individuals. They own that property. That is their facility, their utility shed, whatever you want. It's theirs, and they can use it as they please. And if they want 15 kids, 100 kids hanging out in their barn, they have a right to do that. It's just whether or not we want to approve it for commercial use. But for residential use, I admire anybody that, have your kids there, have your kids be able to practice ball, their friends. You're allowed to do that. We just cannot, with the situation that it is.
If this would have been on 80 acres, it wouldn't have been an issue.
There would have been no question. Probably if it had been
5
on
acres.
Yeah, if it had been on 5 to 10 acres, there probably would have been a different discussion with the commissioners.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Any other comments before we move on?
No, sir.
Okay. Consider a motion to approve Resolution 2021-18 amendments to Article 41, Access Management, and 43, Cross-Access Easements of the Leavenworth County Zoning and Subdivision Regulations.
Commissioner, this is a request to approve Resolution 2021-18, amendments to Articles 41 and 43 of our zoning and subdivision regulations. Certainly there is a lot of information here. I will answer any questions that you have, but there are just a couple of things that I want to point out specifically. One, as you all know, we had a work session where we all agreed that reducing the minimum spacing between roadways and driveways was what needed to happen for development in the county. So that section, B, A, 1 through 10, has been amended to make those changes. Under Exhibit C, this is under Article 41, under Exhibit C, Public Road Access Management Standards. The Planning Commission did want it to be very clearly stated that you either create a 4-way intersection or you may meet the driveway spacing requirements. The Planning Commission felt that was very clear. It is not ambiguous, according to the Planning Commission. Staff agrees. Either one. If there is a road to the north, create a 4-way intersection or meet the driveway spacing or the roadway spacing requirements. You have 2 options. It is not required to do one or the other. Specifically, 2 options. Do which one fits your development the best. That is the intention of that. Certainly, staff will amend it if the board feels it needs to be amended. We were trying to make that very clear. Under Article 43, we have amended where it stated that all developments shall be situated so that all lots are accessed by the cross-access easement, and cross-access easements shall be subject to the Leavenworth County Access Management Policy requirements for driveway spacing. That was ambiguous. We have changed that to cross-access easements shall be subject to the Leavenworth County Access Management Policy requirements for driveway and roadway spacing when servicing 3 or more parcels. Developments serving 2 parcels shall only be required to meet the driveway spacing requirements, and that change came directly from the board. So again, very black and white, very clear. 2 driveway, 3 or more driveway and roadway spacing requirements. And then the final thing is under Section 3.3. We clearly stated that a roadway had to be designed by an engineer. As we know, there was a lot of pushback on whether or not that roadway actually had to be built. Certainly the intention is that the roadway needed to be built as it was submitted to the county. So we have clarified that. We're not requiring an as-built drawing. We're simply requiring a letter, a memo, if the engineer prefers to do an as-built drawing, something from the designing engineer that says the roadway was built in conformance with what was presented to the county. Again, that was direction from the work session. The Planning Commission voted 7-0 to approve this resolution, these amendments.
I just want to make it clear that when we were talking about spacing requirement, it was on the same side of the road only, not the other side of the road. And same way with these lining these roads up. I mean, if it's going to be a subdivision that's going to have to make a swoop in there to line up and you lose 5 lots over it or 3 lots or whatever, I don't think. I said, same side of the road only is what I want to see.
Let me make sure my mic's on. And Commissioners, I think that the conversation was, and this was with the Public Works Director and Crystal and myself, is that you've driven places where roads are slightly offset, or they're offset. Maybe they're exactly like this, where they're just 40 feet would have lined them up, which makes for a better intersection. We can all agree. We're not asking that you move it from a quarter mile away. What we're saying is, if in the design you can accommodate lining it up, then that should happen. So we don't have this 16-foot offset or this 20-foot offset. Not that it's from over here a quarter mile away to here. That was the intention of this. And Noel is here. He can tell me if I'm wrong about what my interpretation was. But we've seen, even in Olathe, you'll see where 2 roads line up and they offset just a little bit, and they have to put a stoplight there to allow traffic to move. And we're just trying to accommodate where we can, not to make it overly burdensome.
I think a classic example of that is right now the construction is going on, but a classic example is at Eisenhower and 20th at New Lawrence Road, where there's just a little teeny tiny shift that just totally, and in the past has always been an issue with that intersection.
Would have took care of that, wouldn't it?
No, I'm just saying that it's just that's a right there an example, and now that's having to be lined up in this process of fixing that intersection. That's where you can really see clearly where the lineup is having to.
Eisenhower and we'll just say, County Road out. That's a little different.
It is now. I mean, but it's easier to fix now too. If it and not again, it wasn't that we're trying to move them from a quarter mile away. It's to try to, if it's possible, to allow the alignment. Otherwise, they need to meet the spacing requirements.
I'm saying the alignment wasn't done even when 20th Street was put in. I'm just saying there's a classic example of when that was not done, and it wasn't lined up.
And I can see what Mr. Herring brought up. It's if we leave it too open to interpretation by staff, and this staff all agrees, we understand what we're trying to say, but will the next staff understand or the next commission understand? Maybe do you think we might put verbiage in there that says, when it talks about what the conditions need to be to line up the 4-way intersection, could we say not to lose number of lots? It can be moved unless it creates the developer to lose one or more lots in the design.
Well, I think if you leave it to the developers, they'll never line a road up. That's why we have to have the policy. I think if you said maybe if it's within like 100 feet, so if the 2 roadways are within 100 feet and within your property still, and that's the other thing we're trying to accommodate is, it may not be possible because your property line may be where you can't move the road over any further. Right. We didn't want to have to we weren't trying to make them acquire additional right-of-way to comply. It was where it's possible. But maybe you could say where you can use a footage limit, where if it's within 100 feet, move it, or if it's within.
That's what I was thinking, something like that.
That's within a lot, really, when you think about it, because our lot depths are 300 feet, so or 260, whatever it is. So if it's within a lot of space, maybe we could use that. If it's within 1 lot, it must be moved. That would be 200 and some feet, right, Crystal?
200 or 300, depending on the zoning district.
So in a 2.5, it'd be 200 feet. So I think that might be a reasonable request, and it allows us to line up a road instead of having a slight offset. That's really all we were trying to accomplish here.
Yeah. Any comments on that request?
What are we talking about, 100 feet?
2 to 3, depending on the zoning.
Just say within 1 lot, and then that way, whatever the zoning is, it is. So
the depth of the lot. it's less
Well, these are
to move it, then less
most of
than
these
the
are gonna
depth
be
of a
on
lot.
Case-by-case basis.
That's the problem. It's trying to come up with verbiage that'll work for everything.
Right.
Well, then leave it as it is, and then let somebody come and ask for it.
Because I'm thinking about 8 Mile subdivision, they got a real wasted lot in the
Right,
front
right,
because
right.
it didn't line up right.
And then you got the one that can't get KDOT access. Is that the one?
That's Fink Farms. It's a dead lot too
Okay.
because of.
Right.
But then come in and ask for that variance. I mean,
Well, yeah, but it's kind of hard when they're starting the plating process. You have to draw it up. You have to pay a surveyor to draw that up. You know what they charge.
that's,
Well, if they start before the planning process,
Yeah, if you follow the rules and you come talk to us before you hire a
Right.
surveyor, and we can talk about these things beforehand,
if
that's
they
the
start that
preferred way to do
alignment
this.
before the planning process, then hopefully they would take into consideration that there's a policy that your road has to line up, and that would be addressed in the planning process.
So can we move to go ahead and accept it, and on the condition we add the distance of requiring realignment of an intersection be the depth of the lot for that specific area or less? Because it would be different, wouldn't it, for different zones?
What's 2.5 acres depth?
200, and 5 is 300.
David, you got any comments on that?
Commissioners, if I could, inasmuch as you've brought up a point of consideration, and that's your purpose, you are not required to determine this issue this morning. You could table the matter for a week or 2 weeks, ask for staff input and wording as to formulate language that would actually achieve the intent that has been stated. I'm loath to try to push forward this morning with the risk of creating language that only muddies the water.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we table Resolution 2021-18.
Second. Have a motion and a second.
Do we have a
Time frame?
A date?
Would
We have
that
to
be
table
the-
to a specific date?
Commissioners, if you tabled it 2 weeks, I think that would give you a specific date.
For 2 weeks.
Okay, 2 weeks.
And is that with the direction to create language that allows for the offset within a lot?
To direct staff to come up with a footage for realignment of the intersection.
You second it? Or do you need a second?
That makes sense, Chris?
Yeah, we tabled it. I second it.
You second it? Okay.
I'll call a roll if nothing else. Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
Aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's that. What did you say, Vicki?
I'm just checking if we were remiss in an earlier decision and motion, and it's not, with the denial of the special use permit, commercial use, did we need to give golden factors for our decision?
Vicki, I can't hear you.
Yay!
Hold on just a second, Mike.
That's unusual.
Okay, go ahead.
I was concerned as to whether or not we need to give a golden factor explanation for the denial of the special use permit for the field, the baseball facility.
Commissioner Cos, members of the commission, I probably should have made that suggestion during the process. What you could do is reopen the matter and go through the golden factors as expressed in the staff report and note your differences of judgment with respect to those factors. You did mention earlier the issues of fire protection, parking, traffic considerations, compatibility with the character of the neighborhood, and the issue of sanitation. However, you could go back through the golden factors, even in order, and list the differences in judgment that you found with respect to the recommendation forwarded to you by the Planning Commission. But I think you did note factors which are golden factors earlier. If you wished to further elucidate them, specify them, you can.
I just want to make certain that we conformed with what we should do. And
Commissioners, I always recommend a course of caution, so if I would suggest you reopen the matter for the purpose of listing the golden factors and the factors that led to your denial.
Okay, I would move that we reopen the denial of Resolution 21-17, the special use permit for the Bowden Baseball Facility, indoor baseball training facility.
I'll second it.
Motion is second. Commissioner Stephen?
I'm going to vote no on that.
Mr. Culverson?
No.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Motion fails.
Okay.
Now, let's go to, I'm thinking, to give a thing, I think it was a lot of it. In fact,
It was already covered.
Well, I know it was covered, but I know that one of the things that we have been, and we have asked our planning commission to do so, and I think it's something that we failed to do in this
Right.
instance, and that we need to.
I understand.
We probably should have did it during the
We should have done it during the discussion, but I was
on the
just
second.
saying
You're
that we
right.
needed to do that.
And I'll
So
make note of that.
Okay.
I didn't
And,
realize that.
but I think we covered a lot of it.
I just
I know
want to
she
make sure we
did.
covered it. I was just.
Mr. Chairman, before we would go to our executive session, I'd like to ask County Councilor, can someone participate in executive session by phone?
Oh, yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Okay. Before we even go there, I'd like to see, I changed it around a little bit. If there's any, I don't think there is any other presentations or anything like that, Mark, but because I like to have exactly the last thing. So if there's anything the county commissioners would like to bring up now, you can also do it afterwards, but I just thought we'd get this out of the way now if you
Right.
wanted to.
Before, yeah, because nobody was going to watch us after we do that. And how you doing?
So Commissioner Stephen, do you have anything you'd like to bring up?
No, but it's very beautiful on the beach, and I'm sure that you all are.
Okay, Mike.
Oh, life is a beach.
Commissioner Smith.
You're breaking up.
Commissioner Doug Smith, I'd like to reconsider my opinion that Commissioner Stephen can participate.
In fact, Becky, cut him off.
We'll keep him in there longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where I'm going to
Have
be next
fun,
week.
Mike.
Okay.
Yeah.
So-
You guys are cheating.
That's where I'm going to be
Jeff,
next
did
week.
you have anything? Well, I know, Rotary guy.
No, this is the end of the month, so all my stuff's usually beginning of the month.
Okay. Becky, do you have anything?
Just, we did participate, our representative for the United Way breakfast on Thursday, and it was well attended, and it was nice to have a gathering of people.
Yeah.
I just couldn't make it. Thanks for going, and I usually don't like to miss meals. I just couldn't make it last Thursday.
Anything else, Becky?
Just listened in on the city commission meeting yesterday. There wasn't a whole lot. They had a study session and kind of gave an update on their upcoming Camp Leavenworth. That's to be held in September, and I think that was the main.
And Lansing speaking back at work session, considering the funding that's coming in, they haven't reached anything, just like us. We're talking about it. Doug, you have anything?
Just had Bayshore City Council last week and Fairmount Township meeting last Thursday. My understanding, I guess, Commissioner Culverson attended the Chiefs meeting, County Chiefs meeting.
Yep. Fire chiefs.
Okay.
And
So.
next week, Commissioner Smith will be gone. And
Oh yeah, I get to go. Yeah, I won't be at the beach.
yeah, Commissioner Colson will be at the beach.
Yeah, nothing exotic there. But I'm looking forward to going. I think
We appreciate you going,
we're all
Doug.
getting back to having meetings
Yep.
and that, and I just think there's a lot of catching up to do on
Issues.
county business. Kansas Association of Counties and different things, because we've pretty much had 2 legislative sessions where we haven't had these meetings. So
Miss out, that's no doubt. Anything else, Doug?
no, sir.
Jeff?
That's it.
Can I go?
Are you ready for a motion? Or are you going to?
Don't matter.
Oh.
You want to do it?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move that the board recess for a closed executive session meeting for discussion involving legal interests of the county as justified by KSA 75-4319B2 for consultation with the legal counsel for the board, which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship, and that the board resume open session at 10:20. We go for 15 minutes, and we resume in 10:20 In the meeting room of the board, present in executive meeting will be Commissioners Jeff Culverson, Vicki Cos, Mike Smith, Doug Smith, and Mike Stevens, Senior County Counselor David Van Perry's, and the County Administrator Mark Lawfrey.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Stephen?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Board has returned to regular session at 10:20 a.m. No decisions were made, and the subject was limited to legal interests of the county. Now, with that being said, is there anything else before I ask for a motion to adjourn?
No, Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. Mr. Stephen?
I don't think you called that.
Hey, you're having too much fun, Commissioner Culverson.
Aye.
I did. Okay.
All right.
We are adjourned.